So welcome to Appanah. We had been today morning reading through your work on dipterocarps. Basically, one thing which struck us by looking from KFRI was the fact that dipterocarps was of interest to KFRI also at its very inception time.
Yeah.
In fact, it is a third report which has been published from KFRI in '79.
Yeah.
So, and the argument put forward was very strong on the studies to be taken up in dipterocarp forests. So it's a long time now. So how do you look back at the studies and the interest which was generated by that study?
My work in dipterocarps went through about 20 years. Initially looking at their regeneration systems, studying the pollination biology, and thereafter those were very academic by nature. And when I joined the Research Institute in Malaysia, we then took on a more silvicultural applied area. So the major problem was when you are logging natural forests, which is a very high component of dipterocarps, regeneration systems are very important for the future crops. So I was examining the silviculture systems. One major advantage with working with dipterocarp forests is that they are the largest component of the timber species there. Sometimes 60 to 70% of a forest is composed of dipterocarp, and it's so timber rich. And the second advantage is they go through massed flowering periods of every 5-7 years, and when the whole forest comes into flower, and there's a lot of regeneration. So if you can exploit these patterns of natural regeneration, it would be easy to manage tropical forests, and there were huge advantages in the regeneration system. So in my view, long-term view, that would have been the easiest tropical forest to manage in the natural status anywhere in the world.
One of the interesting observations was about the pulse resource hypothesis, which when you say that it doesn't happen every year, it happens after a sequence of years. So what is the scale, temporal scale at which you look at forest from a management perspective?
From management perspective, the ideal way would have been to use it in the classical traditional system of stand rotations of 60 years, uniform systems. But mankind is unlikely, because the economic demands, to wait that long. So they employed a selection system which has a shorter rotations, perhaps in the 35 to 45 year rotations. But the problem with the selection systems, which actually became a selective felling system, is that the idea was to take out the big trees, and leave behind the medium-sized pole trees. On paper, theoretically, it works very well. But in reality, the way we harvest using mechanical methods, tractor, bulldozer, logging systems, you damage a lot of the remaining poles. And in tropical conditions, when these poles get slightly damaged, you don't see mortality immediately, but the trees keep dying for a long period. So the intended trees for the future crop, the next crop, which may be the next 35 or 40 years later, may die while you're waiting. So you actually have lost the trees that you are waiting for your second crop. So as a consequence of that, we are not likely to achieve the scientific management systems we initially thought of because of logging damage to the poles of medium-sized trees.
In countries like India, Bangladesh, where selection felling have been stopped, and natural forests are just left untouched, maybe in those places, the earlier studies on dipterocarps would be now looked upon as studies in which basic science has gained a lot. So what
that is correct. In fact, all the ideas of tropical forest management were basically born in India at the time when the British were working here, and looked at the regeneration systems of trees in this region, and that was the basis in which elsewhere in the tropics systems of management were employed. So India was practically the birthplace of tropical forestry. Also, we must add on the findings of teak production systems in Burma at that time. The Brandeis system of teak management was born in Burma. That too added on to understanding of forestry.
Now that globally there is a shift towards participatory management from the earlier period of production forestry, which is not very prominent now in Kerala context at least. And in India, on a larger sense, also the production forestry is not very strong component in the forest management. So, but we know very well that this participatory management strategies also is not a success on a grand scale. Have you looked upon this issue?
Yes, I have actually done work in places like Nepal, Cambodia and Laos, and I began to understand what the issues are. Most of the issues are human related. If you want it to succeed, it will succeed. And if you hold back, if you do not give your maximum to the social issues, then there will be no success. This is how I look at it. In places where I worked, particularly Nepal, we are talking about livelihood of people. And so the people don't have much of an opportunity to work on agriculture because there's very little agricultural land. So they have to depend on forest resources. And so forest has become a very important source of livelihood for poor people, landless people. The question therefore remains, are you really giving them the opportunity to have tenurial rights, to have ownership of some of the resources, and to be able to maximize their wealth out of these resources, which are state-owned resources? Unless the government gives them all these full rights to own it and to benefit from it, if you give it in half measures, this will never work. The word participatory is beyond, the old days, of course, it was regulatory. Governments made measures, government made decisions, and whatever trickles of opportunities given mostly in terms of employment were given to people. That period is over. We are now talking of participatory. Participatory would not just mean a livelihood thing, it is more than that, it's a decision making as well. Like from the start, which is the forest area that's going to be given to people, who are the people that are going to be beneficiaries of it, and how are they going to benefit from it, what are the opportunities the government can give in terms of training, trade, skills, and other marketing skills, etc. You have to give 100% of it to the people for it to succeed. You can't give it in half measures. You can't say that today you start participatory forests, you plant trees, and when you see the trees, you don't suddenly reverse your decision and say, no, we have to share it with the department. If you make that kind of regulations which are not full commitments, and it doesn't come with proper legal documentation, then the principle of giving is lost. Again, uncertainty takes place. People start wondering whether you are actually, your commitments are honest. So this sort of unsavory, nefarious decisions have happened. So people lost trust, and that should never happen in participatory. The decision should be joint.
You mean to say that the decision to extend the lease lands in Nepal was a decision which gave positive results?
It is beginning to. Once they made the decision that the leasehold forestry was an example, we were working there, they have said, okay, these are your lands, you have to work, you can work on it, you can take the benefits out of it, and they attach other forms of support to it. I am beginning to see a lot of good development. I've been to see some farms where the villagers, one individual who has learned a little bit about goat rearing and goat maintenance, he's now got a pen with 60 goats when he started with just 2. And this happened within the period of 5 years. So you don't just give them a piece of land and say work on it, you also give them the technical knowledge with it, otherwise it won't work. So this, if you're talking a livelihood development, it has to go through a suite of assistance. 1, the permanency, 2, legal rights, 3, the technical knowledge, and 4, systems where he is able to sell and improve his life.
So we realize that forestry is very much attached to livelihood at the ground level. But within a country, how important is the sector of forestry for the people in government? When they prioritize their policies, then having discussions.
This is where, one, we should not give 100% thinking that forestry will solve all the problems. Forestry is only a part of the solution. Education must go with it. Even conditions exist where in agricultural situations water is coming from the forest, other kinds of resources are coming from the forest. There is also small agricultural plots. A combination of these are more likely to succeed than just forests. However, if in very poor conditions, forest may become the only resource left. In that situation, you have to give them much more rights. In the past, people never gave them timber rights, for example. They said timber rights belong to the state, all the other things, minor forest produce. It is not much if you look at the amount they can make out of it. It was just subsistence existence. They could never go beyond that. So now things are changing. Okay, why not timber rights? That's a kind of, you have to make decisions like that. And if you want to improve the livelihoods of people, you actually have to mean it and you have to give it.
So if you have a look at science proper, you have been in touch with many institutions across the globe who are doing primary research in forestry. What do you think is the primary drivers on decision on what area they are working, what problems they are addressing, what is the type of research they are doing? What are the primary drivers of research?
There are many things that drive research. One is if you are an academic institute like a university, it is just knowledge pursuit. Sometimes, of course, the knowledge pursuit will be determined by the donor who is giving the funds. He would be interested in you working in certain area. However, in applied institutes, it is usually with a very clear objective, and the objective would be determined by the government. More or less, if it is the forest department, they would want value from your findings. Value means within the lifetime of your scientific career, you have findings which are then applicable. So that is it's not a driver, but it is a necessity of government supported institutions that the people who are paying the taxes would get something back. Even in that area, although it is entrained to do certain specific areas, the scientists are usually given latitude to do a little bit beyond some amount of academic work, because it is the academic work that usually is the root, is the nursery for good ideas in the applied area also. So a combination of that keeps scientists excited and interested and enjoy the work. And the most important thing is you have to engage a person who likes that work. You can't make everybody a scientist. Some people are much more creative and they enjoy that type of work. You have to start with such individuals. They are not there for the financial or the reputation or the positions. They are there simply because they love such lifestyle, the pursuit of knowledge. So that's where you get success.
And in one of your writings, you had quoted a case where there was a specific research program on solving a particular problem. And many years after, the same program was done elsewhere without knowing that the research has happened earlier. So has the situation changed? Is there much more connectivity and visibility of research?
Yes, there are situations like that have happened in the past because one, we don't have third world scientists generally publish in places which are not well received across the world. So your knowledge can therefore become very localized and into the grey literature. So these things can go missing. However, today's network systems are able to bring about information from many different sources. So it has changed a lot, the environment for research. So very grey literature can be sourced quite easily as long as somebody has quoted it, somebody has put that in the website. So things have improved tremendously.
One thing, when you look at the different systems operating in different countries, there's a lot of complexity involved when you look at forest management. And when international organizations reach out to each of the countries, there's a different response. Some countries may accept some of the international norms, some countries may not do that.
Yeah.
So at the, what is the strategy at the international level to enthuse a particular country towards better management practices?
Yeah. There has been a lot of debate internally within FAO as to how best to engage countries and support them. In the past, there was a time when my predecessors were saying that the national issues are inviolate and we cannot go and interfere and tell them what to do. I think that period is over. We are not in favor of that. Good science is good science. Good practice is good practice. Good management is good management. If you take that attitude, if countries are not doing it correctly and in the best of scientific understanding and knowledge, that is the current thinking, it is our responsibility to advise them correctly. Whether they do it or not is somewhat dependent on circumstances, but we owe them the responsibility to tell them that what they are doing may not necessarily be correct. So that is the rationale that we are using now. Of course, countries still differ quite a lot in receiving these ideas from us. Big countries, solid countries like India, which have got very good institutions and very solid government systems, because of the nature in which they work, it takes a long time to trickle through the system. Nevertheless, good science prevails in the end. In smaller countries which are poorly funded and they are not well equipped, they tend to therefore be better recipients, faster recipients of external knowledge, and they tend to receive, or rather we tend to give a lot more attention to those poorer countries. In that sense, India, it is mainly in engagement and discussions and advisory level. We don't go to the field and do any particular thing in a big way. You people are well equipped for that already. So it is mostly at knowledge exchange that we play a large role. In smaller countries which are much poorer, poorly equipped, they don't have the scientific staff, we do a lot more at the field level. But we provide demonstrations, we provide examples, and then we tell them that these are the good ways. In all our work, we put a lot of emphasis on capacity building, so that by the time the project ends and we leave, there are enough people in the country to carry on good work.
Looking at the much more smaller scale of area of Kerala, you had been off and on in Kerala. How do you think of the quality of research which is happening from this part of the country, from an international perspective?
From an international perspective, this institute has semi-independence from the government. It is able to also receive funding from external sources, and that is important to maintain that. Also, your scientists are not curbed to work 100% on issues that are application oriented. So you have some flexibility, and in that is an ideal arrangement. And you're also more open to the external involvement, inclusive really. You are able to travel, you are able to collaborate with other scientists elsewhere in the world. All these things add great value, because new science, we are talking not of individuals working, we are talking of collaboration, we are talking multi-scientific agenda. So a problem today is not just studying just the xylem or phloem of a tree. We go beyond that. We have to look at the roots, we have to look at the soils, we have to look at the tree itself, we have to look at people's usage. So it's because it's such a complex thing, many people have to be brought together, and these can only be done through collaboration with other institutions which have strength in other areas like social science or disease or microbiology. So you can't work independently, and it's best done together with other institutions, and that opportunity exists with this institute. So you people always will have the advantage over others. So if you maintain